this is my review of Slime Diaries. Okay, so in this episode we see Rimuru's first summer in Jura, and long story short, it's just this episode is just a bunch of him showing all the different residents of Tempest how he actually celebrates the summer back where he was from. So one of the first things he does is he actually requests Shuna to find some sunflowers for him, and she reveals that they didn't actually have sunflowers per se, so she got a plant that looked close enough. And on the surface they do look like sunflowers. They're big, they're yellow, and they have the big seed thing on the front. But that's where the similarities stop, because as it turns out, these sunflowers, or the pseudo sunflowers, are indeed sentient, and Rimuru finds this out a little bit too disturbingly when he goes inside for a cool drink, and all of those pseudo sunflowers start staring at him. And he quickly realizes that he's being watched, although he can't determine from what, because they go back to their default position every time he turns around. At which point he goes out into the forest, while Rigor and accompanies Rigor to the praying shrine for Veldora. And the two notice that it's a lot harder than it usually is. And Rimuru starts to realize that this was also the first time since he came there that they haven't had a lot of trees, due to the fact that he's been, well, long story short, he's been deforesting the area to build his city, and obviously he's starting to realize that may have an impact on the environment. Although Rigor tells him otherwise, pointing out that it's likely the fact that Veldora disappeared, that's causing the environmental change. Which doesn't ease Rimuru's mind at all, because he realizes that he's responsible for Veldora as well, because he was the one who caused Veldora's disappearance. So he understandably panics and then apologizes immediately to Veldora, who's still inside of him at this point in the story. And Veldora merely remarks that it's fine and that he shouldn't worry about such trivial things. Yeah. And at which point Rimuru goes back to the main office with Shion and Shuna, and as they're working, he begins to ask Great Sage if there's any indication of what deforestation has in the environment, and immediately begins, and as he's researching this information with the help from Great Sage, he notices that Shion and Shuna seem a little bit hot, and he points out that they don't need to wear such formal clothing, because they always wear their uniforms everywhere. So, and he's quick to point out that they don't need to because if they can get warm, they can wear something a little bit more comfortable. But Shuna points out that she doesn't mind very much, that because she's in an official position, and she doesn't want to neglect her duties, and she can put up with being a little more than a little warm. And then Shion remarks that even if she is a little bit warm, she can always remove a layer that isn't visible, like she did today. And then at which point Shuna escorts herself and Shion out of the building, because she quickly realizes that Shion is going commando, and yeah, basically, long story short, she just excuses her out of the building before Shion could say anything embarrassing. So, and Rimuru is completely oblivious to this whole thing. He doesn't get that Shion isn't wearing any underwear. So, yeah, he doesn't pick up on it, but Shuna definitely does, and immediately escorts her out. It's a really funny scene. But in case, as he's thinking of other things to do, he meets up with Gopta and goes to hang out with him and his friends. And while they're hanging out, he asks Gopta if there's anything they can do for fun around there. And Gopta points out that he's not exactly sure what Rimuru means. At which point Rimuru remembers that he used to catch bugs when he was a kid. Obviously before he reincarnated, but he points this out, and since Gopta only ever knew him as a slime and therefore doesn't really know what he means by as a kid, Rimuru draws him a rough picture of a bug that he used to catch when he was younger, and asks if they have them around, and Gopta points out that they do, but it's evident by the way his tone of voice that there's something different about the bugs that he doesn't want to tell Rimuru right away. But Rimuru insists that they go bug hunting, much to all the other goblins' chagrin. And they all go out into the forest with a bunch of bug nets to actually go and catch this bug that Rimuru used to catch as a child. But Gobta once again voices his concerns about how he feels like this isn't going to be very safe and that they may be underprepared. And Rimuru merely calls him a scaredy cat, pointing out that if he's so afraid of bugs, he can go back to town. But then we find out why he's so afraid of the bugs that Rimuru wants to catch. Because as it turns out, they're like 6 feet tall, and one of them just kind of comes out lumbering out of the forest and chases down Rimuru and his friends and sends Gobta flying. So after that little ordeal, they decide instead to have a Super Soaker contest with Rimuru basically going up against all the goblins. And it goes about as well as you expect. Rimuru quickly gets ganged up on, and Gobta proclaims his desire to soak Rimuru head to tail, and they proceed to do just that. And Gobta is implied to take some sort of perverse pleasure in the fact that he just super soaked Rimuru to hell and back. Only for him to be knocked out of that fantasy when Rimuru retaliates by being a little bit unfair of his own by launching an entire blast of water from his mouth to just kind of chase off all the other goblins, and it makes like a mile-wide pillar of chaos behind it. So yeah, Rimuru basically just gets tired of Gobta and the other goblin shit and just wrecks house. And then it also cuts to Shion and Ranga hanging out, and Shion notices that Ranga seems a little bit depressed as of late, and Ranga merely points out that he used to be called on by Rimuru all the time, and that Rimuru used to use him to go from place to place, and that they would actually play together as companions, as like master and pet. But because by the way that Ranga describes it, it's a very romantic type of thing, which causes Shion to become jealous, and Shion then points out that she hasn't even tried half of the things that Ranga has done yet, and that she really should. And then she immediately assaults Ranga by pointing out that he likely didn't get called because he's a little bit too warm. At which point the two start going to blows, since Ranga points out that as the official secretary, she can't keep carrying him around all the time, but she does anyway, and the two goes to blows and start wrestling each other in the grass while the pseudo sunflowers watch. At which point Rimuru comes back and doesn't fully understand why they're fighting or wrestling. All he knows is that they are. And then proceeds to believe that they're good friends if they're able to wrestle in the heat like that, and decides that he should pair them up more often. So yeah, it's a little bit of a funny scene, but then immediately after this, he and Shion goes to visit Benimaru while he's working on laundry, and asks him if he would like to participate in an endurance contest. And the rules of the endurance contest are fairly simple. Basically they try to make themselves as warm and as hot as possible, and whoever passes out last wins. So yeah, it's a little bit dangerous, but because you could get heat stroke from it, but as long as it's done in moderation, it'll be fine. And the way Rimuru describes is that they first turn up all the heat and sit in a hot room, then they put on layers of clothes, and then they eat a hot pot, and after that, whoever's still standing wins. So, and while Benimaru is more than a little hesitant to actually do it, Shion, after a bit of prodding from Shion and about pointing out how he seems like a bit of a lazy bones, Benimaru immediately professes that he will participate in the tournament, and then professes that he will win. And also a goblin girl asks Gobta if he would like to participate as well, but Gobta merely refuses, pointing out that while he would like to, he feels like something is going to go horribly wrong, and decides to back out. And right he was, because when they get to the hot pot, it eliminates everybody because Shion cooked it. So yeah, it's just a running gag that Shion's cooking is terrible. We've well established this at this point, but it's used to great effect in this little side anime, because because she's freaking, because they make it more of a running joke that fits better into a slice of life type thing, where she tries and fails to actually cook things, and then everybody else just pays the consequences because it's for slapstick and the sake of comedy, and it's really funny. But in case Gauta, after witnessing that, he goes back. He decides to go to the blacksmith shop to actually pick up the weapon that Corby was made him. And after discovering how hot it is, then proceeds to compliment Corby on the fact that he's able to stay in here while it's so blazing warm. And Corby merely shrugs it off, pointing out that that's nothing, like thick skin and a little heat isn't much for him. And Gauta again can't help but admire Kirby's dedication, that he's willing to sit in a hot room for days on end, even when it's the hottest it's been, and is able to function at full capacity. But then he immediately takes it back once he sees his weapon and discovers that Kirby has actually made some sort of eldritch horror instead of a sword. So yeah, at which point he tells Corby to go outside. So yeah, it's really funny and really amusing. But then we cut back to the main office where Shion is trying to cuddle with Rimuru, pointing out that they basically as a continuation of what happened with her previous scene, where she and Ranga wrestled with each other over who should cuddle with Rimuru more. And when Shuna sees that, she walks in and sees them cuddling, she immediately asks if she can take a turn cuddling Rimuru, and Shion immediately remarks that no, because it's an official secretary thing, which Rimuru immediately remarks it is not. And of course, this scene is just another classic scene where Shion and Shuna fight over Rimuru. And it's a bit more of a slapsticky type deal here, because as we've established, it fits a lot better here in this slice of life style than it does in the original. I mean, the original anime is more serious in its presentation for the most part, and that's fine because that's what the kind of anime it is. But here, some of the little jokey moments actually stand out a little bit more, because the animators can actually just go completely nuts with it and just completely go with it. Case in point, Shun and Shion keep trading off who gets to hold Rimuru, and eventually they start pulling them apart. And Rimuru merely protests, pointing out that they're going to rip him in half. And then Rimuru decides to compromise by inflating himself so that they can both cuddle with him. With Rimuru pointing out that he's not really indulging them, and that they somehow wound up being a mascot for both of them. But he points out that he's not going to indulge them, even though he's basically become a glorified warming pillow for them, which is pointed out by the fact that they point out that he's getting too hot and that he needs to cool himself down. So he does. And even Great Sage points out that he's lying, pointing out that he is indeed indulging them. And Rimuru merely tells Great Sage to shut up. But in case it cuts back to the field where they planted all the crops, and Gelda's actually coming by to investigate the crops that he personally planted, which, as it turns out, are tomato plants. And Riruna has actually points out that apparently the plants haven't actually taken. So Riruna points out that she's been monitoring the tomato plants, but a combination of the heat and the fact that some of them haven't adapted to the soil, very few of them have actually been transplanted safely. But she does point out that there's hopes, because some of them have started to bear tomatoes. And she tells him that since there was one that can actually brew a tomato, that he should be the one to eat it. But only for him to turn around and give it to the little goblin girl that followed him to the field. And she immediately takes it and eats it, and Ben is completely cute about it. It's just I don't know this little goblin girl's name, but she is easily the cutest character in this. Little kids are just the cutest thing in anime. It's always the best thing. But when Riruna asks Geld if that was alright, he merely nods and leaves. So yeah, he tries to be a little bit cool about it, but it's clear that he just kind of. He does have a soft spot for kids, but he tries to play it off as something else. So yeah, but in case as the day ends, Rimuru goes back to Trainee's bar, and she makes him a special drink that's made with cooling mints and other things instead of alcohol to be enjoyed during the cool summer's day. And sure enough, Rimuru is kind of a little bit upset by the fact that there's no alcohol in it, but then remarks to Trainee that he felt that this hot summer was going to be more of a bother than it was, but Trainee merely remarks that it's just a usual fluctuation and it'll probably be fine. And then she remarks that even so, because of Rimuru, everybody else is adjusting well to their new roles in life, and that everybody is able to carry on because of him. And then also Rimuru finally decides while she's talking about that to finally bring up the fact that she works in a bar that apparently she owns now. And he's quick to point out that seems a little bit weird because he was pretty sure she didn't own the bar before and now she does. With her only remarking again that everybody has adjusted well to their new life. At which point Gobta barges into the bar and grabs Rimuru's hand and pulls him out of the bar, pointing out that the fireflies have actually gathered and that they're going to miss them if he dawdles too long. So Rimuru excuses himself and goes out to view the fireflies, and he's just kind of taken into the beauty as he and all of his friends admire the fireflies that are just gathering on the lakeside. And he remarks that it was a refreshing summer, but he's glad that he was able to experience it with all of his friends, and also professes that he is going to fill in his diary before his time is out, because he does want to actually record some things in there. And this entire anime is just of him recording all the different various moments, so I guess he succeeded. But it's just really funny. But there is one last scene at the end of this where all of the as we've established in a previous episode, the first one I believe, all the slimes usually come out during the summer months, and Rimuru is the only exception. So naturally, because it's summer, all the slimes pop out of the ground and proceed to frolic in the nearby fields, and even investigate the new city of Jura, which wasn't there before. So they investigate the city of Tempest and just kind of take admiration in all the different people. Slimes aren't very bright. They are cognitive enough to notice that there was a city there when there wasn't usually a city there. So they naturally go to investigate. And there's even a scene of Rimuru challenging one to a shape-shifting contest, and he wins. He basically, in order, he transforms himself into a pair of legs, a hand, and the statue of the thinker, which the slime is barely able to keep up with, and then they proceed to leave. Also he begins to admire the slimes as they go about their business. Only for all of his friends to immediately tell him not to go back to living with his family, which he is immediately confused by because they are his family, which is cute. But yeah, that's just this episode. This episode was just to showcase that how his friends and family actually acclimate to the warmer weather. And that's what this episode is. It was just him teaching them about how to spend summer, and that's what this episode was. There's really not much else I can say about that. But yeah, in any case, that's my review of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. What do you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks, and I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check this out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!